Welcome back to Math Bootcamp for Young Professionals. This is our final lesson, Lesson 12. We're talking about the coordinate plane. So our first slide here is going to show the example that I'm going to do here on the board. But I put this here so that as you're watching the video, you can jot down some notes for yourself. But there's some explanation here. So the first thing you're going to see is the slope-intercept form. And that's what's written on this board here. It seems confusing at first because it's a bunch of letters. But each letter represents something. So here we have y equals mx plus b. The most important things to remember, we want to know what this m stands for and what the b represents. M is for the slope. And we're going to talk about that in a second. What does the slope mean? B represents the point that the line crosses the y-axis. So just a refresher, when you're looking at a coordinate plane, you want to remember that this horizontal line is the x and the vertical is the y-axis. That never changes. So you have x and you have y. And when you are listing or writing out your coordinate points, the x is always going to come first. So for example, this point here is 2, -3, so this is your x. So this 2 represents the x, and the -3 is the y. So that means it goes to the right 2, it goes on the x-axis to the right, and then it goes down 3 because it's negative. So 1, 2, 3. This point right here, -1, 0, again, -1 is going to be on the x-axis, so it goes to the left once, -1, and then it's 0, which means it doesn't go up or down. So this is your -1, 0. But where does the line, when you draw your line, where does it cross the y-axis? That's what this represents. And for this example, the line crosses the y-axis at 0, -1. So it doesn't go left or right, so the x is 0, but it goes down 1. So that is where the line crosses the y-axis. So back to this slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. Again, the b where it crosses the y, and the m represents the slope. So what is the slope? If you look back at your slide, this explains what slope is. So slope is rise over run. So vertical, meaning how many spots up or down the line travels, and then to the left or right, how far does it travel? So horizontally. So rise over run. So think of it like a slope, as if you're walking up a hill or walking down a hill. You're going up, but you're not going straight up. You're going up and to the right a little, up to the right a little. So that's rise over run, or slope. So again, back to our example here, we want to think about what we already know just by looking at this. We might not know how to write this out with the correct numbers yet, but there are certain things that we can see that we do know just by looking at what they've given us. So again, B is where the line crosses the y-axis. So as long as you have 2 points, you can draw a line. That's all you need. Wherever the 2 points are, you just connect them, and then you keep drawing your line in both directions. And you can find out a lot of answers just from that alone. In this case, again, we're talking about the B, which is this right here. This is where it crosses. What is the point? It's 0, -1. It doesn't go left or right, so it's 0, but then it does go down 1. So this is your x. It doesn't move, but it does go down 1. And it's -1. So when we're going to fill this in here, we're going to fill in this slope-intercept form. Instead of plus b, it's going to be -1 because it's negative. It's at the negative spot. So this right here is -1. Now we're going to look at the slope. So 2 different ways you can find slope in this problem. You might have to use the formula for slope, which is right here. You should write this down somewhere on that paper or on the back. You want to write this down. This is a formula for finding slope. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. again, as long as you have 2 points, which you do, you have these 2 points that were given, you can fill this in. It doesn't matter if these are switched, as long as you keep the coordinates the same. So this is x and y. We'll call this one y2. So x1 and y1, x2 and y2. So our y2 is -3. We subtract y1, which is 0. So we're just taking this y minus this y. Our x2 minus x1, we have a 2 here, and that's minus. Now this is a -1, so it's 2 minus the -1. So this is when we have to remember how to work with integers. We have a +2, we're subtracting a -1, or a -1. So when you work that out, you get -3 over 3. So -3 minus 0 is -3. A 2 minus a -1 is 2 plus 1. We'll write that out, which is 3. So here we have a fraction, -3 over 3. That just comes out to be a -1. Because remember, negative divided by a positive is a negative. So -1. That's our slope. So we found our slope, which is m. Because remember, m is for slope. So now we know our slope is -1 times x. So this is our slope-intercept form. Y equals -1x minus 1. Another way to find the slope, and with this you can just look at it and you'll know, it goes down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right. So you know your slope is simply 1 over 1 because it goes down 1 and over 1. So rise over run. And again, a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So whether you're counting this way or up, you're still going to get 1 over 1, and it's going to be negative. And you know it's negative because from left to right, it's going down. So when it's going down from left to right, you know it's negative. So if you are trying to find the answer for a test and it gives you this, but you have to put it in this slope-intercept form, you can do that by just looking at the numbers. So all we did was we counted up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. That's our slope, 1x. It's negative because it goes down. This is -1 because that's where it crosses the y-axis at 0, -1. So we can see all of that just by simply looking at this picture. Again, if you can't figure out the slope, you can always use this formula. And again, this would probably be something that's listed on the test. For example, the GED, you will get a formula sheet. So if you forget how to find slope, you can just look at your formula sheet and it's going to show you this. But you have to remember to carefully plug in the numbers. Watch your negatives because that's where people will make mistakes. The next example, we're still talking about slope, but the equation's presented in a different way. So we have to switch it around so that it looks like the one that we just did. So here is our next example. And now this is what we call point slope form. But from this, we can still figure out what's our slope and what are some points and where the line crosses the y-axis. So I'm going to write it. Actually, I'll write it right here. So y minus 2 equals 1/2. So I'm going to do some combining of the numbers so we take it back to this form, because this is what we want it to look like so that we can plug in our points and find our slope and draw our line. So first thing I would do is multiply these two. So 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. There's a negative sign here. So when I'm multiplying a positive and a negative, I'm going to have a negative. So 1/2 times 6 turns out to be 3. So again, 1/2 times 6, which equals 3. So if you're doing that by hand, you just want to remember half, you multiply it by a whole number, which is 6, you end up with 3. So y minus 2, 1/2 times x, and then minus 3. I want to get this y by itself because I want it to look like this. I want to have y by itself. So I'm going to add 2, have my y by itself, and now I have 1/2 x. A negative 3 plus a 2 is negative 1. So now I have this. I have y equals m, here's my slope, x minus 1. So remember what this means. This is where the line crosses the y-axis. So this is my first point that I can figure out. If it crosses the y-axis at 0, -1, then I know that this is my first point, 0, -1. And now from here, I have my slope. It's positive. This is a positive slope. So it's going to go this way. So it's going to go up 1 over 2. So up 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2, and so on. Again, I know that because slope means rise over run. So it goes up, it rises, 1 goes over 2. Up 1 over 2. And you could go on forever. And then, of course, you would just draw as straight of a line as you could. That's not straight, but you get the idea. So all you need to start is this right here. 0, -1 is our b. And from there, you just fill in using slope. So up 1 over 2. So if you have to draw your line from this point, switch it to your y equals mx plus b and go from there. And that is all we have for coordinate planes. Thank you for joining the Young Professionals Math Bootcamp.